The moment you stop explaining yourself, toxic people do not feel peace. They feel panic. Because your distance takes away the one thing they were using against you, access to your reaction. When you were explaining, defending, chasing, or trying to be understood, they still had a way inside your mind. But when you become quiet, they lose the map. They can no longer predict you. They can no longer trigger you. They can no longer use your need for closure to pull you back into the pattern. And that is why they hate your distance. Not because you are cruel, because your silence reveals how much control they thought they had. This is not about playing games. This is about what happens when your nervous system finally stops negotiating with confusion. Here are 7 psychological reasons why toxic people hate your distance. The first reason toxic people hate your distance is because they lose emotional access. Some people do not need to control your life. They only need to control your emotional state. If they can make you angry, they know they still matter. If they can make you explain yourself, they know they still have influence. If they can make you anxious for a reply, they know they still have a way inside. Your reaction tells them they are still connected to your nervous system. But distance interrupts that connection. Suddenly, they do not know what you feel. They do not know what you are thinking. They do not know if their words reached you. And for someone who feeds on emotional access, that silence feels like power being taken away. Because they were not attached to your peace. They were attached to your response. The second reason they hate your distance is because you become unpredictable. Before they knew the pattern, they pulled away. You chased. They acted cold. You asked what was wrong. They gave you a little warmth. You relaxed. Then the cycle started again. That is not connection. That is emotional conditioning. But when you create distance, the script breaks. You stop asking the same questions. You stop sending the same long messages. You stop trying to repair something you did not break. And now they have a problem. They cannot calculate your next move. They cannot control the timing of your emotions. They cannot use the old version of you as a map. Your distance tells them something they did not expect. You are no longer waiting for permission to be okay. The third reason toxic people hate your distance is because their fake indifference collapses. Some people act powerful only because you keep reacting. They look calm when you are emotional. They look detached when you are chasing. They look in control when you are trying to understand them. But the moment you stop, something changes. The person who acted like they did not care starts watching you. The person who ignored your pain starts noticing your absence. The person who dismissed your feelings suddenly wants to know why you are different. This is where the mask begins to crack, because they were never as indifferent as they pretended to be. They were calm because you were doing the emotional work for both of you. When you remove yourself from that role, their control has nowhere to hide. No argument, no reaction, no emotional performance, only the truth. They needed your attention more than they wanted to admit. The fourth reason they hate your distance is because it removes the reward. Every reaction used to give them something. Your anger gave them proof. Your explanation gave them access. Your long message gave them importance. Even negative attention can feel like power to someone who wants control. But distance interrupts the payment system. No reaction. No emotional labor. No proof that they still control the room. And without the reward, the pattern starts to die. This is why some people suddenly become louder when you become quieter. They are not confused by your silence. They are uncomfortable because the old reward is gone. And when a toxic pattern stops being fed, it begins to expose itself. The fifth reason they hate your distance is because they interpret your calmness as rejection. When you stop reacting, some people think you are punishing them, but you are not punishing them. You are regulating yourself. You are choosing not to bleed emotionally in front of someone who keeps reopening the wound. You are choosing not to turn every silence into a courtroom. You are choosing peace over performance. But to people who are used to chaos, calmness feels offensive. They knew what to do with your anxiety. They knew how to answer your explanations. They knew how to twist your emotional reactions. But your calm gives them nothing to hold. No panic, no begging, no desperate need to be understood. And that feels like rejection because they were used to being the center of your emotional weather. Now they are not. That is what they hate, not your calmness, your freedom inside it. The sixth reason toxic people hate your distance is because guilt no longer opens the door. There was a time when one small accusation could pull you back in. You changed. You are being cold. You do not care anymore. You are acting like you are better than me. And maybe before, those words worked. Maybe you explained. Maybe you apologized for having boundaries. Maybe you softened your voice just to prove you are not cruel. But distance teaches you something powerful. Not every accusation deserves a defense. Sometimes they call you cold because they can no longer use your warmth. Sometimes they call you selfish because you stopped abandoning yourself for their comfort. Sometimes they say you changed because you stopped shrinking into the version of you they could control. And when guilt stops working, they panic because the old key no longer fits the new you. The seventh reason they hate your distance is the deepest. Your absence becomes a mirror. When you were close, they could focus on your reaction, your tone, your message, your emotion, your need for answers. But when you step back, the distraction disappears. Now there is no argument to hide behind, no reaction to twist, no long explanation to dissect, no emotional noise to blame, only silence. And silence has a strange power. It makes people meet the consequences of their own behavior. Your absence shows them what their actions created. It shows them that access to you was never guaranteed. It shows them that even patient people can become unavailable. This is why distance is so threatening, because it does not attack, it reveals. And for some people, being revealed feels worse than being confronted. But understand this clearly. Distance is not revenge. Distance is not a strategy to make someone chase you. Distance is not a performance designed to make them suffer. Real distance is what happens when your mind finally accepts what your body already knew, that staying close to someone was costing you peace. You do not create distance to punish them. You create distance to hear yourself again, to remember what your nervous system feels like without constant confusion, to separate care from obligation, love from anxiety, connection from control. And the strongest distance is quiet. It does not announce itself. It does not beg to be noticed. It does not say, "Look what you made me do." It simply removes access from anyone who kept using closeness as a weapon. That is why it works. Because real distance is not loud. It is clean. It is controlled. And sometimes it is the first honest thing you do for yourself. So if toxic people hate your distance, pay attention. They may not hate you. They may hate the fact that you are no longer emotionally easy to reach. They may hate that your silence no longer means weakness. They may hate that your peace no longer depends on their approval. And they may hate that you finally learned the difference between being kind and being available. You do not need to explain your healing to people who benefited from your confusion. You do not need to prove your peace to people who only understood your pain. And you do not need to return to a pattern just because someone misses the version of you they could control. Sometimes distance is not the end of love. Sometimes it is the beginning of self-respect. If this helped you understand a pattern you could not explain before, subscribe to Psych Atlas. The mind is the only territory worth defending.